long before colonial flags appeared on the horizon, before foreign laws were forced upon ancient lands. East of the great Niger River lived a people whose society was built on balance, unity, and tradition. These were the Anioma people, occupying what is today known as Delta State in southern Nigeria. Their communities were prosperous and deeply organized. Their lives were guided not by kings or foreign rulers, but by tradition, spirituality, and a powerful sense of communal responsibility. This was the Anioma world before the Ekumeku Resistance. Anioma villages were vibrant and full of activity. Across the land stood large family compounds. These compounds housed several generations of the same lineage. Grandparents, parents, children, and extended relatives lived together, forming strong family networks that supported one another through every stage of life. Life in these communities was built on hard work and cooperation. Most Anioma men were farmers, traders, palm wine tappers, or blacksmiths. Farming formed the backbone of the Anioma economy. The fertile land produced crops such as yam, cassava, cocoyam, vegetables, and plantains. Among these crops, yam held special importance. It was considered the king of crops and symbolized wealth, strength, and masculinity. A man's success was often measured by the size of his yam barns, but farming alone did not define Anioma prosperity. The region was also rich in oil palm trees, and the production of palm oil and palm kernels became one of the most important economic activities in Anioma society. Palm oil was used locally for cooking, medicine, rituals, and preservation of food, but it was also a valuable trade commodity that connected Anioma traders to larger markets across the Niger River and throughout West Africa. Long before colonial rule, Anioma traders transported palm oil, palm kernels, and agricultural goods through forest paths and river routes, exchanging them for textiles, metal goods, salt, and other commodities. This trade network played a vital role in the economic strength and independence of Anioma communities. Palm wine tapping was another respected profession. Skilled climbers scaled tall palm trees to harvest the sweet drink enjoyed in daily life and used in sacred ceremonies. Blacksmiths were equally valued. They forged farming tools, weapons, and ceremonial items, making them essential to the survival and prosperity of the community. Markets served as the heart of economic activity, connecting villages and allowing the exchange of goods, ideas, and traditions. But what truly made Anioma society strong was its deep sense of communal unity. Unlike many other societies, the Anioma people did not have kings or centralized rulers. Instead, their leadership system was built on hierarchy, wisdom, and collective decision-making. At the top of community leadership stood the Ezani. The Ezani was usually the oldest and most respected man in the community. He was chosen not because of wealth or military strength, but because of wisdom, experience, and ancestral authority. However, the Ezani did not rule alone. Anioma governance was built around three important social institutions: the Umuna, the Umuada, and the age grade system. The Umuna referred to the assembly of male members of the same lineage. The word literally means children of the father. The Umuna served as the primary political and social institution within Anioma communities. They handled family disputes, land ownership matters, marriage negotiations, and important community decisions. Every adult male had a voice within the Umuna, and decisions were made through discussion and consensus rather than force. But leadership in Anioma society was not limited to men. One of the most powerful institutions within the community was the Umuada. Umuada means daughters of the lineage. These were women born into a family, even if they had married into other communities. Despite living elsewhere after marriage, they never lost their authority within their ancestral homes. The Umuada served as the moral guardians of the community. They enforced justice, settled family disputes, protected women from abuse, and maintained peace between families. In many cases, no major decision could stand without their approval. Their presence ensured balance between men and women within the structure of society. Another pillar of Anioma society was the age grade system. An age grade consisted of individuals born within a similar period who grew up together and formed lifelong social bonds. Age grades worked collectively to support their members. They helped build houses, clear farmland, maintain village roads, and provide security for the community. One of their most important responsibilities was ensuring that every young adult had the support needed to establish a household and start a family. The Anioma believed strongly in collective progress. No person was expected to struggle alone. But beyond their social and political organization, Anioma life was deeply shaped by spiritual beliefs. Anioma spirituality was rooted in nature, balance, and reverence for the ancestors. At the center of their belief system was Chukwu, the supreme creator. However, the Anioma people did not see Chukwu as a distant god, separated from the world. Instead, they believed Chukwu existed within the very forces of nature itself. The sun, the waters, the earth, and the air were seen as expressions of the divine presence in creation. To understand this belief, one must understand the 4 sacred market days that structured Anioma life. Anioma society followed a 4-day market cycle that organized both economic and spiritual life. These 4 days were Eke, Oye, Afor, and Nkwo. But these days were more than trading schedules. They represented the 4 fundamental elements of nature. Ike represented the sun. The sun was the source of light, warmth, and life. Without the sun, crops would not grow and life itself would not flourish. Because of this, Eke symbolized life force, energy, and divine illumination. Oye represented water. Water sustained crops, animals, and human life. It cleansed both the body and the spirit. Rivers and streams were often treated as sacred spaces where spiritual presence could be felt. Oye symbolized renewal, nourishment, and purification. Afor represented earth, known as Aja-ana. The earth was seen as the great mother of life. It provided food, shelter, and the ground upon which communities lived. It was also the resting place of ancestors. Because of this, Afor symbolized fertility, stability, and ancestral connection. Nkwo represented air. Air was the invisible force that gave breath to every living being. It carried sound, speech, and unseen spiritual energy. Nkwo symbolized breath, movement, and the spiritual world beyond human sight. The Anioma believed these 4 elements worked together to sustain creation. None could exist without the others. Life required the balance of sun, water, earth, and air. Because of this belief, the Anioma understood Chukwu as the unity of these natural forces. Chukwu was not simply a distant being in the sky. Chukwu was nature itself. The sun that nourished crops, the waters that sustained life, the earth that produced food, and the air that gave breath. Together, these elements formed the divine balance of the universe. Nature was therefore something to respect, protect, and live in harmony with. Because spirituality was deeply connected to nature and ancestry, the Anioma people communicated with the spiritual world through sacred declarations rather than formal prayers. Declarations were solemn statements made while invoking Chukwu, the ancestors, and the spiritual forces of nature. These declarations were performed using sacred items that carried deep symbolic meaning. Among these were Nzu, the white chalk symbolizing purity and truth. Oji, the alligator pepper used in spiritual communication. Oji, the kola nut, one of the most sacred symbols in Anioma and Igbo culture. The kola nut represented life, unity, hospitality, and communion with the ancestors. Edu, a sacred staff representing ancestral authority. Palm wine, along with hot drinks, were also used in rituals and often poured onto the earth as libations. Libations honored the ancestors and invited their presence into important gatherings. Every Anioma community also maintained sacred shrines and deities, each cared for by custodians responsible for preserving the spiritual balance of the land. Guiding this spiritual system were individuals known as Dibias. Dibias were spiritual specialists believed to possess deep knowledge and spiritual abilities. Some served as healers using herbs and traditional medicine. Others acted as spiritual mediators, maintaining harmony between humans and the spirit world. Some were Afa diviners, revealing hidden truths through spiritual consultation. Others served as protectors, guarding communities against spiritual harm. Their wisdom came from both ancestral knowledge and spiritual calling. Anioma life was also rich with festivals and cultural celebrations. One of the most important was the New Yam Festival, marking the beginning of the harvest season. It was a time of gratitude, feasting, and unity. No one ate the new yam until the elders performed the sacred rituals. Another beloved celebration was the Masquerade Festival, where masked performers represented ancestral spirits returning to visit the living. They danced through the villages, entertaining the people while reminding them of their connection to the spirit world. Communities also held wrestling festivals, naming ceremonies for newborn children, and elaborate marriage celebrations that united entire families and lineages. Above all, the Anioma people valued their ancestors. Ancestors were believed to watch over the living, guiding and protecting the community. Their traditions, leadership systems, and spiritual practices honored those who came before them. This created a society where no one stood above the collective. Authority was shared. Power was balanced. Community came before individual ambition. For generations, the Anioma people thrived under this system. Their communities were strong. Their traditions were respected. Their economy, built on farming, palm oil trade, and vibrant markets, was independent. But in the late 19th century, a new force began to appear along the Niger River. Agents of the British Empire arrived, backed by powerful trading companies and colonial authority. They introduced new laws, new taxes, and new systems of rule. These policies ignored Anioma's spiritual traditions, disrupted their trade networks, and attempted to replace their traditional leadership structures. The British expected obedience, but the Anioma people were not a society that easily accepted outside control. And so, as colonial pressure increased, the Anioma people began to resist. From that resistance would emerge one of the most powerful anti-colonial movements in the region. A movement remembered in history as the Ekumeku Resistance. And that story is where the real struggle
begins in part 2. Make sure you don't miss it.